Hey, all you beautiful people out there. Welcome to People Pursuing Greatness Podcast, episode 51. Today we're joined by the amazing, multi-talented Skye Avalon. Skye is an author. She's a lifetime student. This woman has something like 4 degrees. She's an artist, a painter, photographer. She's also a Shibatsu rope bondage hobbyist, which is essentially a form of bondage, but it's done in the style of Shibatsu. We talk a lot about that in the podcast. She's also an everyday mystic, and I don't really want to try to define that in my own words, but she does essentially say that it's her way of working with people, which she actually does this as part of her business, where she is actually able to give you a sacred contract reading. So she almost identifies as an empath, your style, your purpose in life, that you may not have been able to put a word to. She does that through her business. So she's also a businesswoman, but again, like I said, this woman is like a phenom. I mean, she's done so many things in her life and is continuing to do so many things. She's a model, which is of course what a lot of her artwork is about. She actually has her works published on her site. I'm just going to plug that now. skyeavalon.com. So it's skyeavalon.com. And her sacred contract reading is literally sacredcontractreading.com. Check out her work. I mean, it is just top shelf, phenomenal. She also has her, I guess it would be considered a spiritual guidebook. There are 22 wisdom cards for contemplation and prayer. It's affirmations for the everyday goddess. You can actually find that on Amazon. I'll say it one more time. Affirmations for the everyday goddess. You guys can find that on Amazon or through her site. I mean, we go through it, man. She's such a genuine person. Beyond the stuff that I already mentioned, we get deep in the weeds with sex, with feminism, even stuff like masturbation, debunking myths about the female body. This cast was amazing. We touch on cultural perspectives of sexuality, religion, art, and growing through education, experience, and ultimately love more leaning towards monogamous partners, or the lack of what we would consider to be traditional monogamous partners. We talk about something called LAT, which I'll let her explain more, but the definition is essentially living apart together. Yeah, it's a thing. I didn't even know this. She also wanted me to go kind of plug just a little bit a website called FetLife, FETLIFE.com. Which it's not for everybody, but if you're into the kink, as they put it, which could be things like bondage, and you want to explore that world and do it safely with a partner, or not, you want to do it on your own. If you're a single person, it doesn't matter. This is an excellent place to start. So kind of taking the red pill, if you will. Also, I did record this one at home. As you guys know, I love to record out in the field. Unfortunately, my little Maximus, had some little interruptions. So you'll hear me reference that a little bit in the podcast. I tried to make it as podcasty as possible, but those are in there. And I'm also testing out a new piece of software. Lots of new stuff, trying to grow the cast, and it's got some learning in there. So I appreciate y'all's patience. The next one will definitely be a little tighter. Appreciate you guys. I'm excited for this one. I want you guys to enjoy it. As always, we're brought to you by me, and I want you guys to subscribe, share this podcast. That's the only way that the show grows, and keep pursuing that greatness. All right, guys, enjoy. Interviews with people pursuing greatness. So we're joined by Skye Avalon today. Say hello, Skye.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Welcome to People Pursuing Greatness podcast. I'm learning a new piece of software, so I apologize. I started talking and then it did a countdown before it even recorded. So that's why you guys are catching us kind of on the back end of a lot of learning. So a lot of technical difficulties. Thank you for helping me out with getting you into the interview, Skye. I'm using this new software. It works beautifully, but when it comes to new stuff, you got to kind of like work out kinks. Shouldn't do it at the beginning of a podcast interview, maybe, but Skye held out. So
absolutely, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Of course. And the reason why I have you on is because you are an incredibly interesting person, and that's kind of what I gathered when I found your social media. And just to kind of speak a little bit about some of the things you do, you're a very educated person. You're finishing your master's thesis in
Yep.
fine arts, right? Fine arts, but what
Yep.
is the
Master
focus
of Fine
in?
Arts, Laguna College of Art and Design. Very
That's awesome.
exciting. Yep.
And
Just
and then
finished
you
it.
also and then you also have your artwork that you've been pursuing basically in parallel with an education, which is never easy to do, like an education alongside like chasing a hobby that I mean, you pursue so vigorously. And I would love for you to explain better what shibatsu rope tying is. If I said it right, did I say it correctly?
Shibari.
Shibari. I said shibatsu, didn't I? Is that the wrong one? Is that different? Is
You
that
know what? It's all good. Everybody's learning, and I am learning too. And that's what my education has been about. It's been about taking a topic like shibari, which is from Japan, and people know, 50 Shades of Grey, so they've got the interest. It was one of the best sellers of all time. If you can imagine all the films, all the books in the world, in all history, it was one of the biggest sellers ever. And when I went to fine art school to get my master's, that was something I was interested at the time in exploring it a little bit more. And when you're in a master's of fine art program, it's not just how well you can draw or paint. It has a lot to do with, can you have a thought behind what you do? Because it's
right?
really easy as an artist, if you're technically good and you have an interest in it, you get the technical skills, but then what do you have to say? And that's what a master's of fine art program does. It requires the student to dig deeper into, why do you want to paint a pretty building? Why do you want to do a landscape? Why do you want to do figures, nude figures?
Right.
And so I love learning, and I've been in school for a long time. I mean, I've got like 2 undergrad degrees. I've got one in business. I've got now one in fine arts, and now I have my
Wow.
master's. And I could be a student for the rest of my life, but everything I've ever wanted to do is to help people heal and to actually like elevate consciousness. And that has been something since my own life journey is about just continuing to have more awareness and more education and understanding about the human condition. And I've been asking myself since I was a little girl, what does this mean? What is life? Why am I here? And I was just born that way. I don't know.
Right.
It's
Just
kind of
curious
like
about life.
I'm this strange little artist child that was, and at the time, you go way back, and, art has never really been supported very much in the United States. So me deciding to be an artist was not okay as a little
And when you
girl.
say when you say that you feel like it
Yeah,
hasn't been supported, you mean like through school, or you just mean like overall, like as a culture?
as a culture. Here in the United States, if you go to Europe and other countries around the world, even China right now, they're very big on, they're so interested and curious about the creative vision. And for some reason in America, we're so industrial and we're so just hard workers, and we kind of put athletics and art on the side burner. So when I was growing up
Right.
as a kid, my parents told me, they said, you are not going to be able to survive if you become an artist. So I
Really?
shut that down. I was
But
like,
you
I'm not going
but
to
you'd
do
hear
that.
that. That's like normal advice though, like coming from another, like I would consider basic American, cultural upbringing. I was always told the same thing, that if you're gonna be an artist, you're gonna be starving. You're gonna be rail
Yeah.
thin, begging for money, playing the
Yep.
guitar on the side of the road, kind of a thing to support your habit
Exactly.
essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I took it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, I'm going to be tough. I'm going to be in this world. And so I got a business degree.
Wow.
It's like, I'm going to be the smart person. I'm going to go out and make a living kind of
And
thing.
and what was your first on ramp into that world? What were you doing to get going in something like that? Because like business, I see that, but like art, how did you path into that? Like, did you
I,
mix the two?
no. Oh,
No.
no.
she's
I,
like she's like, hold on, did you hear about being poor if you're an artist? She's like, I made money and then I did the art, right?
I was pretty hardcore, and I just was really practical. Got a business degree. I went into actually working, but this is a lucky thing. So Macintosh was basically coming out with the Apple Lisa, like from the
Okay.
beginning. And
Yeah.
I was fooling around with a Mac while I was on a PC.
Okay.
And I realized that the Mac was incredible for vision and creating things.
Right.
And I got hooked on Macintosh computers and I rode that whole crest of creativity with Steve Jobs and the Macs. And I went through Adobe, I
Wow.
went through all the creative programs, the software for the layout. And I would not call myself an artist, but I was an artist because I was in design. I started
Sure.
teaching myself how to be a designer. And then I worked for another 25 years with design companies, advertising companies. I was self employed. So if you fast forward it,
Wow.
I got to a place in my 40s where I realized maybe I'm an artist.
Right. Just a well-paid artist, which is key.
I ran my own business. I ran my own business and I was self employed. I was a contractor and I was really tough. I enjoyed it. I loved the creative, but I would not work for someone permanently because I like the freedom of thinking out of the box.
Sure.
And in the meantime, I was teaching myself all the spiritual, religious. I was becoming a mystic. I was starting to realize I have this ability to actually connect with people and help them. And I started a business along with my graphic design business and being a self-employed artist as a designer. Not a fine artist. That's too scary, right?
Well,
So
what's
I
a
was
okay? So
actually coaching people.
okay, and
And
that's what I was gonna
I
say. Define a mystic for me. What is a mystic? Because I got to start there, just so that I'm coming from a layman's perspective. So I want to know what are we defining when we say mystic?
So I call myself an everyday mystic. And
Okay.
people, okay, so to be in a monastery, and that was what the world was. It used to be if you're a mystic, you sit and you meditate and you pray and you connect and you work with God and all the beings of your religion and your spiritual practice, and that is to serve, right? An everyday mystic is someone who's unleashed on the world. And there's someone that has this ability to go into higher truth and higher contemplation. So the philosophy is taking all of world religions, all spiritual beliefs, and going to a greater truth. And an everyday
Interesting.
mystic is someone who can go to the highest perspective and say that these are the great truths of all religions and spirituality, and you bring it in your service and in your everyday life. And
So
so when I
so
get up in the
so you're
morning,
saying like talk the
yeah,
talk if or walk the walk if you talk the talk about being this everyday mystic, like you kind of have to represent that and be a part of the universe in that from that perspective and exist that way. That's interesting. So what would be
yeah.
considered your what would be considered your you said these rules that are considered like truths. What do you consider to be truths and how do you establish those? Like these truths that you essentially work off of as a mystic.
Well, one of my favorites and what inspires me with my painting is we are all one. And it's the idea of oneness. And so to segue that into my artwork and why I feel so strongly about it is we're all human beings connected. I believe we're spiritual beings with human bodies. So we have this sort of a physical limitation. And when we're connected to something greater and connected to one another in a place of like, I feel you, see you, know you, and we don't put up walls. And it's that opening of the heart of, I don't see your color. I don't see what your sexual preferences are. I don't see what your age is. All I know is you're a human being and you're like me. We are so much alike in our darkness and our lightness.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And that is a really big concept to try to communicate to people. And we're sitting here talking about it. But for people to really know that and wake up in the morning and go, I'm limited by this physical vehicle in a certain way, but I also have the opportunity to connect in so many ways, whether it's through prayer, meditation, through my practice of yoga, through my practice of sport. There's so many ways to
Do you
get
feel
to
that
oneness.
extends to like the love of a father to a son, or a mother to a son to a daughter? You know what I mean? Do you feel that that's another way that it's expressed essentially is because it's that kind of love that sees nothing except for love? Is that kind of the concept that you're getting at?
Yeah, it's non-judgmental. And
Non-judgmental. Okay. Because I think that to me, I love stuff like that because I consider myself an atheist, but I love to consider and try to speak to people in a way that shows that, you don't need to have any sort of background in order to love somebody. And then to also just do the things that you said. I don't need to say that it's Yahweh, the Christian God, or Muhammad, or any of these specific backgrounds
right.
in order to produce the same sort of love or live the way that a lot of these prophets did. Like Jesus basically you describe Jesus in a nutshell in terms of what his analogy is, this love of another human, which is completely blind, you know what I mean? But it is all and consuming, and people are like, well, how can you feel that way? And you're still an atheist. It's like, I guess if I wanted to use a term like being a mystic like that, an everyday mystic, I like that idea. That's really intriguing to me because I feel like that's something that in terms of my philosophy or when people want to engage with me to talk about things like that, I have a mix of a lot of different things because I feel like your typical cookie cutter design of how a religion is very boring to me because it's just shoved down your throat. Like American culture,
Yep.
let's go back to it. I feel like I've always had
Mhm.
it shoved down my throat to be in this Christian way of doing things. But I feel like there's always been boundaries even to that they may not be able to see, where I felt like I outgrew those with just my perception of love. Like, especially having kids, it's this thing that I never would have thought that I could just love somebody so
Yeah.
openly and incredibly, from like a
Yeah.
place that it's not even like your heart or anything. It's just more like your being. It's a weird sensation, same with my wife and my mom. Right. But it's different because it's like, it is truly uncapped love that's the only way that I could probably say that, I can kind of get to where you're at with that concept. That makes me have much more respect for you. I like that a lot.
Yeah, but that's the goddess. It's the idea of the goddess, and I talk about that a lot with my artwork, and that's why I feature myself as a model because the feminine is about love and openness and acceptance and non-judgment. And so for me, the world is like the one, and then it broke up into the masculine and the feminine, just to keep it really simple without spending 4 hours and getting into Jung and all the philosophers that I love.
Sure, sure.
It's like for me, when I wake up in the morning, the world is about my masculine heart, or I mean, my feminine heart, or my masculine focus, my mind.
Interesting.
It's the mind and the heart. And so we all have inside of ourselves the masculine and the feminine. And what we're not connecting with is our hearts as much because we're all self-protect. We're taught to be safe, and this is my tribe, and this is what my tribe believes in, and this is what I grew up with. You won't see a Muslim believing in Jesus necessarily.
Right.
It's where you
Not
were
typically.
raised, what your tribe taught you, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that, but we evolve past our tribe when we say, I am an individual, and this is how I'm going to put together a world model that goes past what my tribe says. But when you do that, your tribe gets really angry with you.
Right.
And so people don't want to, because they want to be, we all want to be connected and loved, right? So it's hard to challenge our family upbringing where we grew up and what they told us to be and what they said to be.
Right.
And
Or to
you're
be
talking
anything
way beyond
opposite.
that. You're already moving way past that. You're already questioning it, but you've got to be a fool in life. You've got to like engage in the full part of yourself to say, I don't really know shit. I don't know anything. I'm just going to
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and not know and be a student of life. And that's what I do. I wake up and I go, I don't really know shit. And even though I feel like I can help and serve in a way with my coaching and my artwork and try to speak to all of this, I'm constantly learning myself, always.
So,
And I
so
say to my clients, take the hits. Like okay, we have two choices. We have a choice to be open, and when people are upset or angry or whatever, we take the hit, or we can be closed so we're self-protect.
sure.
And that's the masculine. It doesn't care about the relational. The feminine part of self wants to relate. I want to connect with you. I want to have that personal life. I want to have my business life and the people that I talk to. I want to feel like a connection with them. That's where the quality of life is. But if I'm just a roboton, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm gonna do things and I'm gonna make $1 million and I'm just gonna do that.
Right. Very
And I'm
objective.
gonna be safe. And
Right.
I'm gonna, make my world the way I want it. We can't, as human beings, connect and at the same time be safe.
That's interesting. So you're almost saying like being exposed and being
Vulnerable.
vulnerable, exactly. Because that's a huge topic that I like to carry in the podcast. Is that a lot of times it's hard to be vulnerable when it comes to a lot of things. This is probably a different direction that I've never gone with it on the show. But so yeah, in regard to being like vulnerable from a man's perspective, and I say this because one of the things
Right.
that I've been doing is this monthly podcast with a friend of mine he's a personal trainer, but we bring on guests and we constantly theming back to the fact that I'm a guy, right? And I'm a stereotypical guy, right? A lot of straight white dude, got raised where I got raised, all the things. But a lot of times, guys that would be in my demographic have an issue with being vulnerable, and that includes like being hurt. So, like if you damage something on like a construction site, they'll usually not go to the doctor. And that has a lot of
Yeah.
implications when it comes to their life. Like you said, a lot of times they have, and now that you're putting a name to it, this masculine objective way of running life, to where if I do this feminine connection with my wife and say, hey, maybe I need to go to the doctor, I might be lesser of a man because of my cultural upbringing. I'm assuming a lot
Yeah.
of things there, but this is a story that's been told time and time again in movies and books and so many
Right.
archetypes. And then in real life, we all know somebody like that. And I think that it's interesting to come up with the concept of having that vulnerability when it comes to emotion and connection, especially for a guy, because a lot of times it's hard to relate to that. It's considered weakness, or your friends call you a pussy because you're crying about, whatever the thing is. And that, like, I've been that guy, and where I've either, now that I've grown, I'm looking back and saying I've been that guy that's talked smack to my friends or somebody because of some weakness that they had. That now I look back and I say, man, now that my emotional maturity's come up, my empathy, whatever you want to call it. Now I look back and I can see that I just needed to be more sensitive in that moment. And what would I have lost? Ultimately, I wouldn't have lost anything. And that's the one thing that I was really hoping that I could, help bring across with this podcast is like, the Me Too movement, feminism, a lot of things that are new, not really new. These ideas have been around for a long time. It's just that now they finally caught mainstream. And I think that it speaks to some bigger cultural shifts. One of them being that men in particular, but a lot of institutions need to have a little bit more of this everyday mysticism and actually grow outside of their tribes. Because I mean, these last couple elections, man, people were just like standing on some weird walls to set between each other, to where it's like there's all that, what you're, in my opinion, masculine energy, rather than like this, let's talk it out. The Democrats and Republicans, we're the same people, man. There's no difference. Husband and wife, they're the same people. It's not one person needs to be tougher than the other in order to survive. It's just not the way it is. And that's one of the reasons why I brought you on, though, is I wanted you to school me in terms of, like where do you see, I guess this is a lead into a good question. Where do you see like
Right.
current culture going in regards to feminism and like women's empowerment, I guess, but more of like I see it now as more teaching. Do you feel that now that all these different movements that have come up, do you feel like culture might be shifting in a direction that's positive, or do you think that there is a lot of room before, or a lot of time before we'll get to that place? Where do you think we stand right now?
Well, so that's a lot.
Take your time with it.
I love it. Can we do another podcast, because I could just talk your ear off. Like, you had a big, huge, enormous, amazing question right there, and I could go off into like 5 different segments.
Please do.
But let me
Please do.
say this. So I think, okay, so just to answer the last question you had, are we going in the right direction? Is this good for men and women and all that? I think from all the spiritual practice that I've had, evolution is consciousness. So yes, we're moving forward in a great direction, because the more we move into our higher way of thinking, you are me, that connectedness again, inside of me, for instance, I have a masculine. I get the masculine. I also understand the feminine. I live in a feminine body. And that's my primary experience. I could never be like a man in my physical body, but I can talk to men and say, how do you feel? What's going on?
As a
Where we're
conduit.
going.
As a conduit,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
Sure.
and that's what it takes. So, because the conversation with the feminist movement, it's been a lot about we're victims. And that conversation is old. It's passé. Women need to start claiming their power. And that's why my artwork and the things I've been doing, it's about feminine empowerment. And it's the pieces of the feminine that are missing, that are not whole, because I look at things as a human being, how can I be the best me that I can be? And how can the people around me be the best themselves? Like, they are going to be who they are.
Like
And that's
true to
part of,
themselves, not with the
true to
facade.
themselves.
Sure.
And it's really hard when you're trying to shake off a tribe and trying to shake off the voices that say, you need to do this, you can't be an artist, you need to do that. And then they're defining your sexuality as a man. They're defining my sexuality as a woman. So from
like you're saying, like you would get criticism that you shouldn't be doing your the rope tying and then the artwork.
Right.
And sure, I could see that.
And the same with the masculine is being told, just be hardcore, don't be in your heart, don't be vulnerable, or you're not a man.
Right.
The messages that little children get when we're being raised, we're societally plugged into our local tribe, our family tribe first. That's that little onion. If you think about an onion, the little circle. Then there's a slightly bigger circle, our schools, our state, our city. Then there's the country. Then there's the world, other countries in the world. And to shake all this off, to find your own self, who you really are, requires a real tough courage. And so you're at a place where you breaking out. You're that creative guy that's going to explore and adventure, and a lot of people are. And the people that ask those questions, like the Matrix movie, do you want to take the red pill or do you want to take the blue pill?
Right.
So not everybody's going to take the red pill.
Right.
You already took it. That's why you're on fire. That's why I got to do this podcast. I got to talk to people. I got to learn.
Right.
When you take the red pill, you can't. Okay, so it's Pandora's box, right? It opens. Pandora opened the box, and then he can't be closed. Once your mind is open, and once you took the red pill and the Matrix, you're on a journey of individuation and spiritual awareness and awakeness. You're opening the box. You're going to be consciously evolving. You're screwed, man. You're done. There's no going back.
You're one of them now.
You're one of them. And even the guy that was the Judas in the movie, like the Jesus Judas, he's like, oh, I wish I hadn't taken the red pill. I should have just taken the blue pill.
Right. But you can't go back. You can't revert.
No. Once you open.
But I feel like you also, you must have gone through some shit, and I may be assuming
I have,
but I'm guessing that you've gone through some shit because and I'm not sure if we brought this up to the audience, but if you guys haven't checked out Skye, could you plug some social media that might lead us to your artwork real quick?
Absolutely. So I'm on Facebook, and you can find me under Skye Avalon, most likely.
Skye with an E.
Skye Avalon, SKYE AVALON. And that's my website as well. It's www.skyeavalon. And I've got links.com to my Instagram. I've got Facebook. It's all off that site, or Facebook, if you can find me on Facebook, which is pretty easy still. I've got a fan page. It's a regular page with my profile. Everything's on there. I'm available through, you can email me. So
that's
absolutely.
So if you guys go to her to check out her social media, you'll instantly see some of her artwork, which is where if you were to come from a conservative perspective, which you guys know I don't, but from somebody else, let's say, she has some very amazing art, but it could be construed as maybe being like over the top, and you're nude essentially, and you're wrapped in these ropes, and I don't want to try to take away from. I want you to explain the whole concept behind that. But that being said, the reason why I'm trying to circle this back to what you just said is essentially that had to have been a big change for your tribe, right? Your people, because I'm sure when you first started doing that, again, I could be assuming, but mom, grandpa, uncle, somebody probably was like, because
There's
it's
always someone.
sure. So to, like you said, you took that red pill and you kind of opened Pandora's box. And I feel like, like you seem to be like, you could just see you're a happy person. You're very happy with what you've done with yourself and you're vivacious for life. But I don't think that kind of stuff can happen unless you take that leap to where you're taking care of, if you just plant that seed that says, man, it would be really cool to just like, try to paint myself or whatever, and I know there was a lot.
Yeah, it never happens that way.
Right. But
yeah, that's, in our generation, it's kind of like an entitlement. It's like, it's going to come easy if I do X, Y, Z. No, it's always a long path. It's
Right.
a learning path. It's the experience path. And that was my path. And it's also courage,
right. And I'm,
and life is tough.
And
It's like life is a struggle and people don't want to own that. And I'm like, you know what? You got to get up in the morning and do your stuff.
yeah.
And dot all your I's and cross all your T's. Nothing in life is easy. And it requires that transition in self-reflection, and doing that self-reflection is part of a spiritual practice. It's part of a religious practice, because you're going to break out as soon as you start inquiring about who am I and what is the meaning of life. You just broke tribe.
Right.
You're out.
You broke the mold.
And you keep pursuing that, and you're a fool, and you just say, I just want to learn about that question, and I want to keep pursuing the answer to that question. You're going to have life experience that sucks. You're going to have great life experience that elevates you. It's being responsible and getting up in the morning and say, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to ask that question.
Oh, I love
Who
it.
the hell am I?
I love it.
And take responsibility for all the bad stuff too. It's like you just have to pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and say, I'm going to keep going to school. I don't have the money. COVID showed up, whatever, And you know what? I had, just for your audience to know, in April, when everybody was like lockdown, my house burned down. I don't have a house. And to me, it was like, oh, that's a cleanse. If you work your spiritual practice, it's a cleanse. I was like, there's a reason. I don't have a religion.
Yeah.
I believe in quantum dynamics and physics, and
damn, you just went left and then right on me. That was awesome. Say it again. You believe in quantum dynamics? Is that what you said?
It's the quantum dynamic field. I believe in the invisible world and how there's so much happening that we can't see, but if you feel it, see it, hear it behind your third eye, I'm going spiritual on you again, but it's like there is so much to a human being that is beyond the visible world. And we know that when you look at a microscope and you're like, I didn't see that.
Right.
The invisible world is so powerful. And so when I wake up in the morning, I just say, okay, my house burned down. That really sucks. And everybody's on my Facebook page going, oh my God. And I'm going, it's a cleanse.
Right. You're like,
it's a cleanse.
I get a new house, guys. What do you mean? I get a new house. There's nothing.
I have good insurance. I've been paying for it my whole life.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's going to be okay. It's going to work out. And I'm living in an apartment right now.
Okay.
And
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, man, if you're, I see you inside of an abode. Oh, look, we got you guys see the cat here that's popping in. We're going to have a kitten interrupt the podcast. Right. She'll come back in. Give her a minute. We got four new members of the family. I don't usually record podcasts from home, audience out there for you guys listening. So I'm in my bedroom and we have 4 new little kittens. My wife's a big cat junkie. So yeah, new life, we're gonna show them how hard it is, go rough them up a little bit, and grow up real
Absolutely. Hey, every being has to go through it. They're going to get roughed up no matter what. It's just like, that's life.
Right. So your house burns down. So did this do anything for you? I realize it's a cleanse, but in the last year, did this shore up some things with you? Did you feel like this made you more confident in a direction that you were already going, like on this, essentially this self-discovery path, this red pill that we're talking about? Is that something that you did more of? Did that harden you in that journey with something like that? Because getting your house burned down is a pretty big deal.
Oh, it made perfect sense. It actually was an expansion. It's really good to be going through the process because I get to reinvent myself. And it's part of that whole reinvention that I started like 4, 5, 6 years ago. And I hate to bring up Madonna. For some people, they're like, oh, Madonna's passé. But I bring her up because she kept reinventing herself
Sure.
every iteration. And that's what creative people do, people that are adventuresome, people that are pioneers, people that are explorers. It's almost a necessity. And there's people that don't, then that's okay. It's their contract, it's their life. The way they're born, we all have a contract. And if you're not contracted for adventure and creativity, then it's going to be a different life path, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's contract makes sense for them. But how do you find a contract?
Right.
By asking, who the hell am I?
And getting out
And
of your
not
tribe.
listening to the tribe.
Yeah.
You can't, if the tribe is giving you the answer, it doesn't, but if it rings true and they say, you'd be a great lawyer, and you're like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer. I argue with everybody. I'm passionate. I'm advocating a purpose. You might be a lawyer.
Right. You might be a lawyer or just a.
But if they're wrong and they say, you're a lawyer, and you're like, but I want to hug a tree. And I don't want to do this. I want to go and get on a boat and dive and see and make sure the creature's okay in the ocean. Then you got to say no to that.
Right.
And a lot of people don't.
Well,
and they live half their lives and they're not being authentic to themselves. They pleased mom and dad and the tribe, but they didn't live their voice. And it's the same with marriage and relationships. We a lot of times take on our personal life becomes someone else's personal life.
Right.
It becomes,
you own a title.
I need to be married.
Yeah. You're a title rather than a person. I could see that.
Yeah, or my relationship has to be defined by my tribe that says I have to be married. Well, there's
Right.
a lot of people that are gay, or they want to be in an open relationship. They want to be with multiple people, and they're bisexual, and our tribe doesn't allow that room. It's starting to with the internet. It's starting to. That's why I talk about bondage, because it's being true to your authentic. How do I resonate with my loves? In the bedroom. What better way to express ourselves? The most authentic place we can be ourselves and to be open. That again, love, openness, or surrender. It's hard to do in the business world. It's hard to do. We need a little bit of a, bring it to the world. This is my business face. This is my professional face. But when we're connecting, when I'm connecting with my love, who is authentically me? What do I want to explore? What are my fantasies?
What's the vulnerable version of you, right?
Exactly.
Sure.
And if my tribe is saying you can only have missionary sex,
right?
You can. That's it. You can only be with the opposite sex. We're actually people that are younger are listening to this or watching this. They're like, oh, that's passé. Why? Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the fucking, right? Because people in our generation, there's still a struggle. 50 Shades of Grey, bestseller ever, right?
Yeah.
But it's in our fantasy and people aren't living it. And my message is listen to your fantasies. Figure out, am I with the right gender?
Right.
Because
I really like this.
Doesn't define who we are. It's because I have a penis or a vagina doesn't mean I want to just be with the opposite sex. Maybe I have a vagina and I want to be with other vaginas.
Right.
And my tribe is saying, no way, you're disowned, it's over. Oh my God, how do you betray yourself, your personal self?
Right. And I couldn't imagine I would be so depressed. I couldn't imagine, I have friends of mine that I've made in my adult life that I just didn't know them through the years, but they're gay couples. They've just recently been able to get married, but they've been together for 20 plus years, let's say. And it's interesting to me to think of how long you'd have to live under the guise of a lie if you were to
it's so painful.
Yeah, like Jay-Z's mom. Let's take it mainstream. Jay-Z's mom just came out recently. Jay-Z's singing about that in his latest album, that his mom was had kids, had him with his dad, and the whole business, right? Like they had all these kids, and then she finds out in her 60s, 70s that she's or comes out. She didn't find out, she knew, but she came out, and that was in light of these recent years, because now it's mainstream acceptable. But that's the thing that goes back to the tribal stuff. It's like, man, I wish that the gay kid could be gay, the gay girl could be gay, the gay, nondescript, the folks that don't claim anything, fine, be about it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's weird to push back on that, because this is apparently the way that humans are. This isn't new, and that's the thing I think is weird from detractors that talk about these things, like the LGBTQ plus community, that that this is some queer uprising, that more kids are identifying as gay than ever before. And I'm like, they were already gay, they just were scared to talk about it. But now they actually have a tribe, you know what I mean, that outgrew the stereotypical one. And I think that's huge. And then to see a person like you, where now you're really expressing these things that you have come to find, and then still be able to like explore new stuff. Like you said, you're still on this journey to like, this next step to you. So I guess the question then would be, with the bondage stuff in mind, what would make you, I don't want to say what would make you lean into that, but like, was there just a day when you woke up and you're like, I just want to try some shit, like get some rope going? Or, I mean, is there a tribe to that? Like, how did you start to take that red pill, cause it seems like now you have it down. You have like a partner that helps you, right? I would imagine. Yes. Okay. Because I don't know if you could tie yourself up.
Yeah, he's my lover. And I mean, I've been taking the red pill probably since I was a little kid.
Okay.
And it was just another iteration of a red pill. And I just said to myself, you know what? This is really interesting, the internet and what's going on. And I had been married for a very, very long time. And I'm still married. And that's great. My partner, so it's an open situation, and this is what helped me take the leap.
Okay.
Is actually saying, you know what, this situation isn't working for us based on the tribe. What can we do to make the situation with my married partner? I said, how can we make this work after 30 plus years of marriage? How can we evolve with each other and love each other in a way that works for both of us? And what a lot of people do, it becomes very acrimonious because there's so much conflict with the tribe saying, now you're divorcing this and that. But now we're in a new era where the new, the openness, the internet is exploding everything. Everybody's having this conversation about, am I really happy in the situation I'm in? Do I really need to continue to be in the situation, or are there other avenues? And so there's open, there's swingers, there's bondage, there's partners that have two lovers, there's partners there's friendships, and there's names for all of these arrangements. And for my situation, it's called LAT.
Okay.
Living apart together.
Okay.
And the fact that they actually have a word for it, that is like probably in the last year.
Interesting.
So, and sex therapists and psychologists are on the cutting edge of all of this, that are coaching and seeing people that are just pushing against, like, I haven't had sex with my married partner for 10 years and it's not working for me anymore. I'm miserable.
Right.
And I've got a higher sex drive and they've got a lower sex drive. When people don't talk and they're stuck in tribe and it's secrets and they have to go behind closed doors and not talk about it, that's when we have destruction and conflict.
Breakdown, sure.
Suffering. When we can say, I'm changing, we all evolve and change as human beings. I never knew I was going to be an artist. Like, I was like, okay, way back, I want to be an artist. Did I ever think I would actually do it? Hell no. Hell no. So those early period fantasies, the way we think and who we define ourselves as, those secrets, if I can say it's not a secret anymore, I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to put it out there. The way I'm living my life isn't true to me.
Right.
It's not authentic. The way I'm married, the way I'm in a relationship, maybe my partner, a girlfriend, boyfriend, it's not working. If I can have that conversation with them, this is why it's not working, then we've opened it. We're already being honest,
right.
More honest. Instead of going behind someone's back, because you can do that on the internet.
Right.
And as long as we're not honest with each other and with ourselves, it's a disaster.
Sure.
Absolute disaster.
Yeah, because you can't meet somebody at their expectation and it be a farce. You know what I mean? Like if your partner's asking you if you're sexually happy and you don't come with the truth, I feel like eventually one of you two is going to want to file for that divorce. Like, really, like, to me, that makes a lot of sense, because what you're speaking to in terms of cutting edge, I think, and I'm not by any means the expert on this, but it just makes sense. Like, people in the past, you almost could get, socially cut out of your tribe if you got a divorce, let alone if you cheated and that led to the divorce. Now it's almost like you've got to take the black and white out of it, the A and B, because, to have a C party and a D party is not considered to be as crazy as it used to be. I mean, exactly what you're saying. And that might have been.
People are doing it but they're doing it behind their spouse's back anyways, or their girlfriend's back. It's like, and when I do readings with people or I sit and I coach them, I get very clear about their contract. And most people want, believe it or not, they usually want a long-term monogamous relationship because they want the intimacy, they want a friendship. It's very hard to keep the fire burning, though, if you're with a friendship. And so the number one rule is for integrity and for great universal truth is transparency and honesty and integrity and loving your own hurt, like love through the wound, and tell that person, it hurts me when you do XYZ, or I need more of this. Right. And people don't have those conversations. And the intimacy is opening so wide with your heart that it hurts. And that's the feminine practice.
The vulnerable piece, right?
Yeah. Because if you're pretending and not authentic and you're not being truthful because you have to hide because your tribe said don't, it's like you're thinking you want to have group sex or you want to tie someone up.
Right.
I mean, it's like that's the first thing is individuation, which is breaking away from the tribe and having a voice and having the courage to say, I want to authentically be seated in what I'm hearing inside.
Right.
I need to listen to me. And it's little baby steps. It starts with that because I didn't just leap into like getting ropes and having a lover, photographer.
I was going to take it there eventually, but I mean, I thought maybe, one day you're just like, let's go to Home Depot. I just saw this video on YouTube. Let's figure it out, honey. Like so do you go through like, did you have like a friend that showed you? Or
no, it was an evolution.
Okay. That's what it sounded like it would be. So it took a little bit of like trying small things to kind of get comfortable with it. Did you feel like you were doing something? I guess this is a silly thing to say, but did it feel naughty-er because it is so against the norm, or you're doing something that's so not you're part of your tribe? Or did it feel like you were fulfilling like something like a big breath of fresh air?
Well, it was okay. So it was a curiosity and a fantasy. Okay. And I'm because I'm an artist, I take risk and I try things. I have to try everything new. When I go to the store, I've got to try all the cereals and like, that looks cool. It's that exploration and the trying. And that's the hard thing for a lot of people is just try on a new idea, a new outfit, a new look. I'm really a blonde. I don't have brunette hair, but I look better with brunette hair. So I dyed it dark. I mean, it's taking that chance and it's little stuff at first. You just start with dyeing your hair brown.
Right.
It's as simple as that. But I had been curious and I was very interested in the darkness of the naughty and the shadow and just what would that be like? And most people start with a fantasy, and I did too. I started with like, I know I want to be like rough. I want to have like very physical. I'm very physical. Mm-hmm. And so I just started to look into it and research it. And there's a great site. I'm not plugging them because they need it, but it's www.fetlife.com. FETLIFE. FetLife. So anybody that has this fantasy that can say to their partner, regardless of sex or gender or whatever, I'm really curious about going a little further. That's the first step I took. I went to FetLife, and it was just through the grapevine. And people started saying, you want to do shibari ropes and get tied? And I was like, I don't know. It seems scary.
Right.
It seems scary. But when I heard about this website, it just like, this world. Right. It's like walking into the Wizard of Oz. You went from Kansas to full chroma color.
Okay, got you.
And what's not good about that?
Right.
I mean, you want to watch the whole movie in color, and then when they go back to Kansas, you're like, oh shit, I'm back in Kansas. Right. That's called vanilla, by the way, vanilla sex.
Okay.
So I wanted chroma color. I knew there was so much more. And my partner, my married partner, he's not he's not contracted. He's like his life. He's a mediator. He's an attorney. He likes safety and security. And I'm the crazy artist person, right? And so we had that conversation. And after 30 years of marriage, he said, I love you very much and I support you. And I want to always be in your life. And I said the same thing. I adore you. I love you. I want to be with you. He gave me the freedom without it being acrimonious and difficult. And that's the world we both stepped into together. And he didn't have to do what I wanted to do. We have our own life path. And mine went a little to the right, his went a little to the left, but we always come together as dear friends. And so when I explored that and I opened FetLife Box and Pandora's Box and all of that, and I said, I'm really going to dive in. That's when I met my lover photographer, my boyfriend, and he is a creative genius. He just, it took off. He had I'm not going to talk about him, but he was ready. He was ready when I was ready to go really explore bondage and shibari.
Sure. And that's awesome because then you have you have acceptance on both sides and then there's like support there as well, because I mean, it's very hard, I think, for people to get into a scenario like you have with your husband, because that is especially as long as you guys have been together, because you guys have been through those times when it was not acceptable to talk about this in a podcast format or something like that. Granted, these didn't exist, but you get my, you would read like stuff like what you're talking about legitimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, like in Playboy written articles, things like that, because this is all the only place where that kind of stuff existed before you really had the internet, where you would have to read an article about people that are in these worlds, or like an HBO documentary. What was it? Real Sex. You remember Real Sex, right? That was the show, right? Like you'd go and you'd watch like these swinger couples that would go to these speakeasies. And it was like, man, that's an interesting concept. And it was so brash at the time, that it was all the hit that it was, because at the time there wasn't reality TV and it wasn't considered to be like normal. That was like, oh, that's a one-off. Those guys do, and again, I go back to this, like in reality, a lot of people have always had these types of fantasies. It just wasn't as mainstream acceptable. You know what I mean? And like, to pursue that greatness, to coin a term. Yes, for the podcast. I know. But like for you to like chase that is amazing. And then like to have like a partner that is willing to allow that in terms of you guys still being together. And then to find this new cat that is willing to also, right? Because I'm sure he knows about hubby, right? And that's all good across the world.
They're really good friends.
There it is. That's amazing.
It's so, and you know what? It's amazing because the individuals, all of us involved, it's being, again, connected, open, willing to talk. And it's the hard conversations. There's very few books right now being written. They're going to be written. That's why I'm excited, because all of this is going to be talked about more and more and more. And we will figure it out. Men and women, we will figure it out. And the internet is incredible because it is forcing us to have these conversations that we didn't have before because we're too shamed, too guilty, the tribe, worried about what mom and dad are going to say, right, brother and sister, their parents. It's like now, I mean, there's great companies that are starting to enlighten us as well with their products and saying, look, this is lesbian culture. This is women loving women, and we're okay with our beautiful bodies, and we're going to, like Beyonce, we're going to just like kick it and be these beautiful super women for each other as women.
I quote Beyonce.
Lesbians are, well, they're leading the way. Okay, so powerful women to women who love women are essentially connecting with each other and saying, I love sexy lingerie. I want to get a dildo on with you. Right. I mean, the women that are heterosexual are still, I'm going to be called a slut. I'm going to be called a whore if I do this. And yet we've got this Facebook craze of selfies and doing these things. And I think women have to own that. We need to step it up with our men if we're heterosexual, and with our women, and because women are sensual. We're very sensual. We like sex just as much as men. And to own that is really important.
But then there's also got to be the fact that, I think, like you said, like social media is kind of bringing out a lot of these things from women, and they may not even know it.
Yep.
like some very conservative people. And just in my circle of friends, I've seen do things on social media that I'm very surprised about. And I feel like they see it as a release almost of like a buildup, like it's like, I let my
Yeah.
freak flag fly hard. Like I got some, I'm all over the place when it comes to the stuff that I do, including the podcast. And, like the stuff I'm into will just like move so fast. Like I was doing a podcast with a massage therapist last week, and now I'm up, talking to basically a sex therapist / artist / author, and these interests can just move. And I think that if people can just get out of that box of just like considering it to be weird to just like you said, red pill even a little bit, like if your girl wants to dress up in some lingerie and take pictures, yeah, like if your girl wants to dress up in some pictures, because she works out at the gym, let's say a mom, and she just wants to do some nice pictures and post them on Instagram, maybe I'm speaking super specifically coming from a guy's perspective, but I don't have like, where I get my bleed off from my buildup. Besides sexual, which is normal, I'm married. I definitely have, like normal sexual fantasies, which we're definitely going to get to, but I do weird stuff that other people like. They're like, you go run for 20 miles for what? And I'm like, I kind of get off on it. You know what I mean? Like it touches me emotionally and it tests my human condition all the time. And it's just something that it might be different than a lady dressing in lingerie and blowing off her steam on Instagram. But to me, it's not. I think it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like not everybody needs to run 20 miles and or have boobs and a vagina to be able to put them on Instagram. You know what I mean? I think we're all doing the same thing. It's just that it's just hard for people to step out of like traditional ideas of what it is to express a human being, because you express yourself and then now like, I'm sure that sex got better, right? Like it couldn't have gotten worse. Like I'm sure that you enjoy it just that much more because you're being true to yourself. Am I wrong in that?
Absolutely. I mean, because I'm connecting with what I always wanted.
Yeah.
And in the fantasies, they're not scary. Once you open the closet and you look at the skeleton, all of a sudden it's just a plastic, pair of bones, a Halloween costume,
Right.
Basically, that you have in your closet.
Right.
It's not this horrible demon. And that's the metaphor for actually exploring self. And we can tiptoe in it. I mean, I tiptoed into mine actually really based on just curiosity, and it felt right. I knew it was right to try to open that door, to open the bondage door. And I can do it without hurting people, because when we do these things that our tribe doesn't want, we can still step into it if we're honest and say, well, I like to go to parties on Saturday night and wear wigs and go to the bisexual, dance clubs.
Right.
And you say to mom and dad, if they're asking, you don't have to invite the conversation if they're really old school, but if they're going to say it, then yes, say yes. Yeah. I'm doing that, mom and dad. And instead of taking on the shame, be that new generation, be that person that has the courage to say, you know what? This is really, I enjoy it every Saturday night, putting my yellow hair in and my hats and changing my costume. I'm a shapeshifter.
I like that.
Some days I'm a man, some days I'm a woman, some days I don't know what the hell I am, but I just know I am a shapeshifter. That's not me actually, really, as an archetype, but people that are shapeshifters. And that's why I do readings for people, because I want them to identify their archetypes, their main patterns in life. And I want them to know who they are so they can claim it, own it,
so
and honor it.
When you're saying an archetype, you're saying like a different identity than just like Morgan's an IT guy and Skye's a student, right? Like you're talking about.
So you'd be probably an engineer archetype, or a tech person, or a nerd archetype.
I'll take it. I'll take it all. I like that.
And nerds are really sexy, by the way.
Thanks. Well, I mean,
they're smart. So, they're really sexy, right? In my opinion.
It's like the Big Bang Theory. Like the Big Bang Theory crew made like nerdy sexy again. I love it. Like all of them. Even Sheldon, like.
Well, ever since Bill Gates, nerds been like really super sexy for women. I mean, just to put it like archetypes out there, they're patterns.
Right.
And there's new patterns, like the nerd wasn't around 80 years ago.
Right.
And so it's a new archetype of what a man, it's usually a man, and someone who's really interested in little trinket, like you're in the garage, like messing around with an engine or something.
Right.
And you want to figure it out, and everybody's like, just stop.
Right.
why are you in there for 7 hours in the garage? And you're like, but it's really
Right.
cool. Like
I like that.
that nerd archetype was not around 70 years
Right.
ago.
Well, what do you think? Do you think that in terms of, maybe I'm bridging these things and tell me if I'm doing this wrong, but do you feel like almost like your bondage is almost like you tinkering in the garage? Am I reaching too much there? Is this almost,
No.
okay? Because this is kind of like, do you feel,
You know why it's not? You know why it's not? Because people that carry a lover archetype, they have a high sex drive. They're super curious people. Yeah.
I have a high sex drive.
Yeah, and that's so it's like a bell curve. Sexuality is a bell curve, and so the people who you're probably talking to also are maybe a higher sex drive or more interested in the feminine, masculine, the polarity. They want to understand women. They want to understand men, their own sexuality. They want to understand why they're creative, why they're inventing, pioneers, or they wouldn't be listening to this
Right.
podcast. So, I mean, I have what I would consider to be a lover archetype. So, I fall into most people in bondage. They've done studies on this, and this is in the last 5 years. This is all new. It's cutting edge, but they have studies with the statistical scientific norm. They've got over 2,000 people taking these tests, these answering these questionnaires. But bondage people, anybody in BDSM, sadomasochism, domination, binding, people like that are usually lover archetypes. They're very sensual. They have a high sex drive, and it's really important to express that and be that.
Well, let me ask you a very layman question then, because I've not got the hook when it comes to bondage quite yet. And this is just, I guess this would be the easiest way to try to like pin this question. What gets you off about bondage? Like, what is the sexual kink that, like, what part about it? Not like necessarily like, oh, this part made me, orgasm or something, but I mean, like, what part about it's like, oh yeah, like this is going like, oh yeah, like is it just the process, or is it like actually just being tied up? Because the idea, right, is to like feel bound up and like secure, right? Or do I have that? How does the kink work?
It's so many things. I would say, okay, so the way people in the community or the kink community or the bondage community or whatever, all the different ways we talk about it, dark sex, naughty sex.
Dark sex.
So the way we can look, it's very, very simply the way to think of it, like the masculine, feminine model. We are all the same. We all have masculine, feminine selves. We all have vanilla in us, which is just pretty traditional.
Take your clothes
straight
off,
up
have missionary sex, normal sex, right?
Yeah, and it's that, and it's great. I mean, for a lot of people, that's their lane. Most people, it will be, and they're not, to be authentic to themselves. They're not driven to want to have sex maybe more than once a month or twice a month. It's not something that is their bodies, their sensuality, feeling that connection, that the connectivity. It's so for a big group of the population, it's not even in their fantasies. There's no interest. But for people that are having fantasies of being tied up, of being dominated, of being submissive, which is being the person that receives and opens to someone who's in charge, taking a leadership role, which we all do in our lives anyways.
Right.
We either are receiving or we're either taking orders or we're being the order giver. And so in the bondage world, it's really clear, and that's the beauty of the community, is to be able to talk about sex and to know your role.
Huh.
Whereas in the vanilla world, in the world of, I don't talk about it because I'm shamed or it's tribal and this is how we do it. We just go in the bedroom and do our little thing.
No butt stuff either.
And that's
no butt
it.
stuff. How dare you?
Yeah, no, there's no nothing.
Right.
Or maybe there's more. Well, sometimes people spank, and the vanilla world, it's already a given. You're fitting in the box, like of this is just sex is just no sex education isn't taught. People don't know. And so even vanillas will oftentimes tap into it and want to do more. And that's what I'm trying to push. I'm trying to talk to not only people that are creative that want to explore, that have already been there, that it's easy for them to kind of walk into it and try it once they see there's information there. But it's also if couples that they know they want more in the bedroom and they're not talking to one another.
Well, do you think what
the bondage world does.
Do you think that that's something that people could explore in order to, like, if maybe they never even thought about that, like they didn't necessarily know that was something that would interest them? How would you, I mean, is that when you say that you're trying to talk to these people, is that what you essentially are doing? Like, hey, check this out. you might like this. Is that kind of like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, first of all, there's very few women. There's more women in bondage than men,
okay.
for
I
one,
didn't, okay.
and they're not talking, and because they're going to be slut shamed or whore shamed.
That's
So
huge.
I'm talking because I'm in a position where I can. This is what I think is so important for women in their own evolution and their own awareness, is to be in a place of more open, be in our bodies, and to actually bring our feminine presence, our power, essential beings, to be with men in a way where we are. I am the goddess. I am the queen. And I know that what I have in any shape, form, or size, I feel connected with my beautiful body. And women are not taught that. We are not encouraged for that. We're slut shamed or whore shamed. And then when women do take the courage, then they're considered to be prostitutes, but they're doing it to each other. The men aren't doing it mostly to the women. The women do it to each other.
That's interesting.
And so it's a tribal thing. And that's why I want to be a role model for women, to be able to say it's okay. I can be educated. I can be a professional. I can get up in the morning, be monogamous with one man. I'm, I have a friendship with my husband. It's very clear. It's a loving, connected friendship. And then with my lover boyfriend, it is a sensual relationship. And I'm with one man. And I'm very clear about that. And I don't care what people define as their sensuality or sexuality, but own it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
be
Lat,
that.
right?
Live it. Tell people
That whole lat
this
thing is
is
new to
who I
me.
am and what I'm doing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're a living example of that with your lat stuff. I never heard of that, and I think that's awesome that there's actual terms. And then the fact that you now clarified that there's like clear definitions to it, which I think if you were to look at it from the outside perspective, let's say again a layman, you would think that it's just free for all. Like, oh, I can go fuck whoever. Oh, you're serious? That's a hall pass. I'm gonna go fuck into the club tonight. You know, like I
Hey, you know what? People do that.
sure.
And people do that and they're not conscious and they don't know. And so what we do is we collide and suffer and make mistakes and mess up our marriages and our relationships because we're not clear about who we are and what we want.
That's
And
huge.
sometimes, there's exploration and there's mistakes. We all do it in everything in our life, including children, everything. We have to try it. We look at books, we read them. But until you can live it a little bit and read about it and learn about it and try it, you're probably not going to know.
Right.
Like, but when you know you're a gay man and like, this is it. I feel so good when I'm with other men in this way. Now we can our culture is getting there now, where gay men can have the freedom to marry and
just
to
talk
be with each
and talk
other.
like straight guys do about women.
They
You know what I mean?
might.
In locker rooms, because like I have gay friends that they can go to bat in ways that I can't when it comes to making like gross locker room jokes. Like I thought straight dudes were like, like you could talk about, I don't know, ass, pussy. You could just say the words and it's just like, heh, heh, heh. But like gay dudes, like if you try to, like I have a gay friend of mine, love you, Kevin, but like this dude can come at me with some stories and he knows he's going to out me. Like I'm like, okay, all right. Like, so I don't ever, and he's one of my best friends because the guy is like, he's just a true one. He's a real one. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he's gay. But when it comes to like that aspect of us fucking around, like what I consider to be normal, like locker room talk, which I usually have with like, heterosexual guys, this dude can come up with jokes that'll just fuck me up. Like I can't do it. And sometimes I'm like, Kevin, okay, all right, bro. Like, and what's funny though, is I have this natural cringe that comes from the world I was raised in, because to hear about, dicks and buttholes is a little bit, it's a little, but that also shows that I'm not gay, for one thing. Like I'm a heterosexual guy, so I'm not into hearing about it, but it's just, to me, it's amazing to hear somebody that is now so open with it. And the fact that he can talk about at the workplace, the first thing he did when I started working at this place, he's like, hey, Morgan, I'm Kevin and I'm gay. I have a husband, and he was almost just like, now what the fuck are you going to say, and it sucks that he comes from that world to have to say that, because that's like you said, to me, it's almost like the whore shaming type of conversation we're having, but with like gay shaming almost. But he almost got to the point now where instead of in the past and he would tell me story after story after story of things that were happening, to him in the past that were shady. Now he's just out with it because that's the culture now. And a lot of the young guys, and I say young guys, but like, you know, millennials and below, a lot of us are coming in and we don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just like when he comes in and he's like, I'm gay. I'm like, cool. And then like, you know, we're joking around and start some dick jokes. I'm like, all right. You can, every time you can beat me with the dick jokes, Kev. You got me, bro. You know, but he's my guy. Like I love hanging out with this dude. But hanging around him, and I want to say this because again, I come from the stereotypical background. It opens my eyes to perspectives that I would have never seen. Same with talking to essentially, you know, like a feminist, a mystic, a woman that goes and does what you do, but it's not. Like I told you before, like you're not an Instagram influencer to where it's just this, you know, objective look at you. You have a purpose behind your artwork and behind what you do. And it stemmed from you taking the red pill, you know, and essentially I think that some people, you know, they have a choice to be able to do that. And some people don't. Like if you're gay, you're a man and you live maybe back in the 70s, you don't have a choice to take that red pill in a lot of places. You know what I mean? It just wasn't an openly acceptable thing.
Yeah.
So now I think that it's cool because you see this and I may not really have like a point to where I was going with this, but like I just see that outside perspective, like kind of growing. Like, and again, I come to it. This has always been the case. It's just that now, you know, you are outing these people that are bigots or they have a problem with that. And I hope that all the dick jokes and stuff make people uncomfortable to the point where they think about it. Like, man, maybe this guy has always been this way and maybe I shouldn't just be such an asshole, you know, and it like that comes to the tribe thing. You know, your kid comes out as gay or your daughter wants to go and take a girl to prom. You need to be cool with that. I don't care what your church says. You know what I mean? Because that kid is depending on that relationship, you know, in order to keep moving. Anyways, that's a deeper subject, but I feel,
you know, it's getting there. I mean, we're really, I mean, the internet, there's no hiding. I mean, we're being tracked by marketers and commercial interests. I mean, there is no hiding anymore. And so owning who we are and being authentic with that and claiming it and honoring it, it's really important. And there's going to be pioneers like yourself. And we're going to talk about it. And the more we can talk about it, the better it is for people behind that are like, what do I do with this situation? I've never heard of LAT before. Right. And I've got a husband and we love each other, but we've been together for 10 years or 5 years or whatever. We love our kids. We want this to work, but it's not working in that way anymore. We're not sensual with each other anymore. Right. This is an economic arrangement and it's a friendship. And so what do you do? Or even open relationships that are like, look, we want to be with other people. Right. And they have that conversation. Why do I have to hide it because I'm a financial executive in Irvine? That, you know, it's so sad that everybody has to be, you know, behind closed doors, but we are getting there.
Well,
it's going to come.
So give me some insight.
It's going to happen. I believe it. Men and women are we're all going to be in just a big love fest. As the feminine comes in and she says, we are going to open and talk to one another and be friends and dialogue. That is the feminine presence. And yeah, I'm a feminist in the sense of I believe in women's empowerment. And also what I don't think is good for women in the feminist movement. And this is where you've got a fourth wave. There's a fourth wave feminist movement going on right now where it's like the Beyoncés and the Shakiras and the J-Los who are saying, look at me. I'm going to climb a pole at the Super Bowl. I'm going to have my ropes. You know, Shakira's doing the ropes. And she's very subtly introducing a concept that's been wanting to happen now for a decade. And saying women can choose what we do with our bodies, how we use our bodies in social media. If I want to take my clothes off, be a hot little bikini model or whatever, we're running our own businesses now. And we get to decide what we do with our professions, our relationships, our children, how we want to organize them. Do we want to be open? Do we want to be closed? Do we want to actually be married economically? Sure. Do we want that commitment? And it's great for men and women because the men want this so much. They want women to claim their sensuality, their bodies, and to say, I am Superwoman in the sense of. And
that's sexy to me. Like for my wife finishing nursing school and like being a mom of 3 kids and like dealing with my ass and like all the above, like, and this is an example, like mad shout out to my wife, because in my opinion, like to see her growth from 13 years ago when I first met her, she came from a background of basically a stereotypically men controlled family and, you know, women weren't as important, just overall. And they were not built up that way to see her like grab shit by the reins and to finish that, it's sexy as fuck. Like I love it because I love the fact that one, she did all of it on her own. I mean, every bit of it. And then beyond that, like the fact that now she's like working, and not only that, but she's bossing up, and like a lot of things are happening in her life. That's because she, you know, was really nervous to do it, but took the red pill. And I'm not going to take credit and say that I was there, but I mean, I was there economically, you know, like I was there, like trying to like, but I'm no stay-at-home dad. I've been working the whole time. Even while she's doing this mad school stuff, she's being this hardcore, like powerful, you know. I always thought, oh, the single lady, you know, I always try to get the Beyonce shit in there when I walk in. I'm like, you still doing it, baby? Yeah, yeah. You know, like she's always Beyonceing up, in my opinion. And I can totally jump on that bandwagon because it makes her happier. It improves our sex life. It does a lot of things that are tertiary that I wouldn't have thought. Like these things attached to life, all coming from just this self-enlightenment, this empowerment, you know. And I wish that, like, you know, my daughter's 14 and she wants to be a veterinarian. And we've tried to push upon her that, you know, I really want you to understand that you have a hard road ahead of you. One, because you're a woman, and two, because if you fall in this straight and narrow path that some of her family has had before, it would be get married and have kids, and then you can pursue your dreams. And I don't think that's the way it should be. I think if you go do the things, pull up in the Mercedes after you got your own practice with the veterinarian, and then go have some babies, or don't. I don't give a, you know what I mean? But I want there to like not be this cookie cutter template designed for her life, because that doesn't exist anymore. It never did. It's just that now, you know, the tribalism is slowly fading. That brings me to my next question. You have these couples, maybe one of these parties, wants to, they want to explore some things. So you said FetLife, right? .com, but where else would be considered like a safe place? Like, okay, let's say, would you go to a sex therapist, in your opinion, in order to explore these things safely with, like, let's say a traditional heterosexual couple, even a gay couple? I don't even mean to point in one direction, but would you say that that's where you would go to start being like, well, to be honest with you, doc, I would like to, you know, have sex with another man, you know? And like, I mean, cause in my opinion, coming from, again, like, let's say a traditional monogamous couple, how would you find that conversation? How do you find that tongue in your mouth if like the woman does want to step out and possibly try something like that? You know what I mean? Like, how does that, how do you start that conversation? Where do you start that conversation?
Yeah, you know, I think there's other resources besides sex therapists, but that's probably a good place to start if you want to, you know, do the Western traditional model of, you know, officially someone who's licensed and credentialed and understands, you know, has studied the psychology and has gone way beyond its specialty. Then they're going to be out of the tribe already as a psychologist. You cannot sit there with people that have all these different beliefs coming in. It could be a homosexual couple or whatever. That's what sex therapists, they are ready on the cutting edge to do that. I'm not a sex therapist. I'm a certified sacred contract reader and life coach. Because of the studying I've done, I basically could become a sex therapist. So that would be my fourth degree. But it's fascinating to me, all of this. And it's important to talk to, I think it's important to talk to educated, open-minded people that are cutting edge on what is happening now, that know that can sit down with a couple and say, or even someone like David Dita, he's incredible. He's not a sex therapist. He's a coach. He's had like 25 publications about the masculine and the feminine and sensuality. And it's his teachings are so credible and so important right now because it's talking about the inner feminine and inner masculine of me. So I have to deal with my own way I show up with my partner. Am I in my masculine? Am I in my feminine? When we're in the bedroom, am I in the feminine? It's things that make you more aware and make you more powerful. Right. Because if you have knowledge and you know who you are and you question who you are and you grow into where you want to go, the relationships in your life are so much more honest and open. And it just all goes back to self, right? Self-knowledge and asking the question and being the student and being humble and being that person who wants to learn all the time and grow. And if you're a sensual person, you're going to go into your sensuality as part of your identity. So almost to express yourself.
Almost like just having the balls to be able to say it, and then to your partner, let's say, could be like the first step to just be able to come out with it because it's the honest truth.
And say, I want to do this. I really, I want to do it with you. Would you be willing to explore? And if they're reacting into tribe and going, no, no, that's too scary, or that's fucked
Right.
up, you're weird, then the conversation needs to be, at some point, it may need to evolve into when there's someone who can educate the other partner, because it's really hard to be in a relationship with someone where someone has a higher sex drive and someone has a lower
Right.
sex drive, or someone has more tribally programmed. And those are conversations that are the tough conversations that every couple needs to get into if they want to go deeper and further
Gotcha.
in their
Well, then
sexuality.
do you get, so I guess just with your, the conversation that you have with your, I don't even want to say the conversation, because I don't want to try to make this come from the perspective, like you said, you're not a licensed sex therapist. So for the audience sake, we're not trying to give medical advice. Like, can we start there?
Right. But you know what? For the audience sake, I mean, I haven't had all this extensive training in it. However, just like any other person out there listening to this and seeing this podcast, we can pick up books. We can go to Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
We can go to the bookstore. We can listen to YouTube. It's exploring into it. Like, how do I make her squirt all
There
over
you
the
go.
place?
So that's what I was asking.
What it can start with what you
Right.
want. I want her to be open and orgasming all over the place. I want her to have 10
There you go.
orgasms.
Okay.
Okay. Start there.
So
You know?
make a objective goal.
And be the expert of orgasms with your love or your girlfriends or whatever or your boyfriends. Be in love with love and love making, if that's what interests you, and pursue it, because there's so much free information, and then there's science, and then there's BS.
Right.
So discernment to know, here are the people that know what they're talking about. This could probably be very good information. What is their education? Doing the research too, you don't just turn anybody on and just listen to anything.
Right. Well, I guess,
But
I feel like the reason why I brought you on in terms of, and I shouldn't say brought on, but the reason why I'm going to turn to this part of the conversation is purely because you have studied this in details that a lot of us have. And because of that, I feel like even if you're not this credentialed person, the fact that you do the things that you do and you hang out in the crowds that you do, you speak more openly about things. And, I have a gang of questions here that I wanted to ask you.
I'm a street therapist. I'm a street therapist. I'm a life coach.
Street therapist, and
I'm going right from the basement, man.
Yeah. So
it's true. I'm doing the research, like right there in, like, I'm not doing it from a study that someone wrote up and wrote a book. That's what most therapists and psychologists have to do. They do it from the level of the ivory tower. And some of them are going into it, but I'm in
you're
there.
a practicing person, and especially like in the bondage world. I mean, so I guess then like simple questions. Do you feel like you get off more when you're under bondage compared to vanilla sex? Is that like, is that just a
I do. It's like going to a brunch instead of just having breakfast.
I love it. So
there's so much more on the menu.
In that same scenario, do you feel like that could potentially, let's say that these two husband and wife, and things are just not that spicy between them. If they tried something like bondage, do you think that could, just at the outset, to even state that, be like, it actually kicks up the sexual erogenous levels more? And that, so that right there is enough, I would think, for somebody just to try it. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think?
Spanking is considered, that's rough sex. So that's not even vanilla anymore, but there's enough people that are willing to do it. But as soon as you start saying, well, let's get the lube out and go to the back door, let's do some of that. And that's when people are like, but that's weird. That's not okay. And that's where the leap has to happen, where you have the conversation. Or not. Maybe you just get a partner that's more curious. And you just go for it. You go for a partner that wants to do all these things, or a little bit more. Yeah, you tiptoe your way into it. I don't know. You backdoor your way into it.
And I think that, and I think that could, like, not necessarily cure all that ails, but man, like, I feel like just spicing up the sex life from that. What would you recommend as bondage or BDSM things
to men or women to spice it up for men or women?
Whatever you think is juicy there.
Okay. So usually with men, it's not that they want to do all these things. Usually they want to do everything. And so where is the thing? So it's like, if I bring it to her, she's going to poo-poo it or no
Right,
it.
right.
So, right. So men are usually ready and willing to go and try things they want to. They want to be subordinate and be tied up, or they want to be dominant and spank them harder and all this stuff, or dress up. It's the women. So I go again to women's empowerment, and what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to teach from my own experience is to say to women, have the conversation with your man. I mean, when he says, babe, I really would like to try this, she in her power could say, yeah, this isn't an insult. This doesn't mean that I'm a slut or some other. Explore it, give it a go, try it. And women have to be in their bodies, and women are learning slowly. So what I would say to the men is, most women need to be walked into it in a loving, practical way that's reassuring. Because it's not okay a lot of the time for them to be like, oh, but I'm a slut, right? Or my tribe said it wasn't okay. The men are already there. So if you can have that conversation with your woman, have her read David Dita, have her go to Esther Perel, on YouTube. Have her learn like little steps of like just exploring her own body. That's usually where women start, is exploring their own masturbation practice. And so it's the gatekeepers, the women are the ones I really believe men are wanting badly. They're there. They're already there.
It's innate in men to be that way, because I know that again, even like from my gay couple friends that I know, one of the things that I didn't realize was like that the entire male libido is twice as strong when it's two men together. But beyond that, there's also those relationships where one partner may not be as open about certain things. Just because they're gay doesn't mean that they're, like the nastiest people in the world. Like they may have this person who wants to be the subordinate, and has to be coaxed into maybe doing something more. And I say coaxed, but like it has to be something that, I guess if there's boundaries established, of course you don't want to go past those, but sometimes those boundaries are cultural, right? And traditional. So you don't know if maybe you just need to like make it okay to like be like, I'm scared. It's like, well, but I couldn't imagine like, like you're saying, like two guys trying to like open that door, because guys are innately just more willing to do stuff. They usually just have like a higher libido. I say this, but I'm a guy, so I know that I'm being partial when I say that. Would you agree with that statement?
So it's the culture again, because women have their libidos. Our libidos are just as strong. There's been studies and documents, and historically, we're the same. Women have as high of a sex drive, if not even more, is what they're finding in research studies. We want to do all of these things, but it's cultural and tribal binding and programming that prevents women from doing it, because of the slut shaming and the whore shaming, and we're not in our bodies. We're not taught anything. And for men, the reason it's encouraged, you're a dog, you can play, your men's sexuality is encouraged. Okay. Women's sexuality is discouraged. It's huge. And so for the conversation to really it's already happening on the internet. Women are starting to say, I am going to explore my body. I'm going to have orgasms. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, be this beautiful love goddess. And if they're going to slut shame me, I don't care. I'm doing self all day. They're womaning up. They're goddessing up. They're queening up, and they're saying, I have this one life, this beautiful body. I want to explore. I love sex, and I'm going to claim it. And so when women start to claim and honor it without shame, and start to be okay with their bodies in the bedroom with the lights all on, and say, I love my curves. Men love that.
Say it again.
They love that. Wonder Woman in the bedroom, and she's just responding and listening and open and responsive. Men want to see their partner, and it could be gay couples too, lesbian, because there's always a masculine woman in a lesbian couple, and there's always a feminine woman, because that's the polarity, the sexual polarity. That's the dynamic. That's where it excites, it ignites. not a lot of sex happens where there's no polarity between as a big concept, masculine and feminine. There's not a lot of sexual polarity and fire if you don't have that
Almost
polarity.
like differences, alpha omega kind of stuff. Sure.
Someone's going to take over. Someone's going to be the more dominant partner and naturally more submissive. And then there's people that 22% of the population switch. I'm a switch, so I can be masculine and very dominant, or I can be very submissive and very feminine. And so naturally, you find out where your path, what your lane is, and you swim it. And you have the conversation. And if you're with a woman who wants to dominate more and you're a dominant man, there's going to be that will become a problem eventually, unless
it might make for a good one night stand, but it probably won't make a good relationship, right?
That's right.
So, so I have a question that I wanted to ask that it was brought in by my wife, actually. So the notion that women can climax in any position and do so in under 5 minutes is one that has been perpetuated in the media, especially in mainstream pornography. Because of this, many men and women believe that there is something inherently wrong with the woman if she can't climax during sex. This belief is a mistaken one. The majority of women only reach orgasm through clitoral stimulation, not through penile vaginal intercourse. What are your thoughts on that? Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of, especially speaking to generational, a lot of younger generations now, if they have the internet, they've seen porn and they've seen it maybe at an earlier age than kids would have in the past. That being said, I think that a lot of cultures, and as time goes on, the internet is continuing to be more normal for kids as they grow up. Do you feel that from your perspective, like, is that firsthand account? Do you have that same notion in mind that you would, like, if you run into people, I'm guessing you talk about sex quite a bit with other people in in those worlds and places that those conversations are appropriate without kids running in the room. But do you feel like that's like a conversation that you have a lot? Like, oh, you must get off. I don't know. Like, what do you hear about that? Like, when it comes to that belief that you can just get, like, any woman should be able to get off the way that they see in porno, I guess.
Okay, so what she's saying, there's real true scientific studies on that. The clitoris for most women, I think don't quote me here, but I'm just going to kind of give a ballpark. It's like 70% of the female population. That is their primary entry into orgasm, into like really experiencing that bliss pleasure. So 20-30% of the female population I call it all spots. So there's 5 ways for women. We have so many pathways for pleasure within our vaginas, all the way to our cervix, in front of the cervix, on the cervix, behind the cervix, through the anus. And it's 5 spots. And so the clitoris is one spot. And what usually happens with women, because especially when you're younger and you're starting to realize your sensuality and you're opening more and more to your sensual experience, as we start by masturbating, self-pleasuring through the clitoris, because it's the easiest, most logical, sensitive spot in a woman's body to start. As women become more comfortable with their bodies, as they become in relationships and they start to feel penetration, so that's the outside, right? On the inside are 4 more spots. And it's the A spot, the P spot, the cervix, and the G spot, and the clitoris. Did I get them all? I mean, then you could go through the back door and get the G spot on the backside.
See,
so,
and just I don't want to break you off, but from my perspective, I would have only thought there's 2 from a guy just kind of saying it. I would have thought clitoris and G spot.
Oh, right. And But that's okay. So back again to tribe and knowledge and information, and what's really is available, and what's happening in porn is the women that are in porn have explored their sensuality. They're open. They're slamming goddesses. Like, I love my body. I love sex. They have explored their vaginas, their cervixes, their anuses are all spots. So for a woman to just say my clitoris. Some women, see, this is an individual thing. Every woman is different. Every man is different. What turns us on? It's like we have these programs from childhood we get them in childhood about what turns us on. It could be feet. It could be whatever. It's amazing, our kinks and our proclivities, our fantasies. It's incredible what we come up with in our dreams and fantasies. And so some women will say, that's it. My clitoris is that's where my sensations are. I don't really get a lot from penetration. Right now, 70%, 80% of the female population doesn't want to do penetration
Really?
that much. And so men have to focus on the clitoris. And that's a good entry into exploring all the rest. It's not that there's something wrong with you if you don't like cervical penetration. Some women, when a penis or a dildo or whatever you're doing, your fingers, it's good to go and explore though. If you're a woman, use your fingers, use your dildo, go and explore your vagina and your cervix, because there is so much sensitivity in all those spots and those locations. Okay, YouTube knows it all. YouTube knows all the spots. If you want to just go free, go to YouTube. And if you're a man, learn all her spots. And you have to have that conversation. That's why bondage in the BDSM world and the Fet Life world, we talk about the spots. We're not just in the dark going, where the hell is her?
Right there? No, right there.
Like, I don't know what to do here. It's like, hey, bondage, in the bondage world, we have the conversation. Do you know what you like? Do you want to try this, babe? Do you like full penetration? Do you want it hard? So we have those conversations. Vanilla, it's just like, oh, I'm not going to talk about that. Just you find it there. It's, and then everybody's unhappy at the end of the hour.
The hour. I like how you said an hour. That is, you're giving a lot to a lot of guys.
Or 15 minutes. I should have said 15 minutes.
I've had some hours, but it's not, it's not typical. I love the fact that you're talking about the communication piece, because I think that's very important. Like, to just be able to talk, like you said, like, oh, this word clitoris and even vagina and cervix, and then, butthole, asshole. I don't know what would be the right nomenclature there, but that can be like,
right. There's like 100 words for it, It's that open and for women to have that conversation, because we are multi-orgasmic. I mean, men, it's one shot. If you're lucky, you go two. For women, we can have 10 orgasms. We can have 20 orgasms. We are insatiable.
I like that.
It's like a woman with love. A woman in her feminine essence, or a man in his feminine essence, it's insatiable. That's why it drives the masculine crazy. Once you open and love a woman in her feminine self, there's no end to it.
Right, and I can agree.
There's not just men.
My bad. I didn't mean to. I was gonna to build off of that. I think it's amazing that women also have the ability to not be selfish in a way where they don't have to necessarily get off during sex in order for it to be considered sex for them. Where guys, I think they're so objective to where if they don't get off, they almost feel like they didn't, even do the act. Like, that's not something you ever think about, as the guy not getting off. Whereas a woman may not orgasm, and one could be the guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, or it's boring, or yada yada. They do the vanilla sex and it's not doing anything for her. Yeah. But to be able to say, like, openly, like, hey, this, I would prefer to have this in order to actually get off, is, like, I think the harder part, and that could just be like, well, babe, let me flip over and do this doggy style for a little while. You know what I mean? Because I like that, and to be able to explain that. But my bad. I didn't mean to throw you off on that, but I just think it's an interesting thing how, it could just be a matter of just saying it right then and there, like, if the guy is able to get off every time, maybe he's not asking his old lady if she's getting off, like, hey babe, did you get off? Because I've heard of women that have never had an orgasm. Have you heard that before? Like, where there's been ladies that have said they can't get off?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing. It's not that the female body is complicated or it's different. It's just, we don't talk about the female body, and we talk about men's experiences and men's orgasms, but women aren't talking about their orgasms and their experiences. And that's the conversation women need to have with men and for themselves. And that is something only women can do, because men are going to bring their masculine selves, their presence, their experience in life. They don't have a vagina. How can they talk about something they don't have an experience? And so what happens with sexual experiences a lot of the times is we all come in at a first level, like we have sex. And we just fuck, right? But when you're with a partner, you're with a lot, and you want to see them more, and you start to talk and say, hey, I like this, babe, or I don't like that. Or you don't have the conversation. It's body language. It's like she's groaning and happy because you're in the back, and she's doesn't seem to enjoy the front. I mean, men can pick up a lot, and women can too, about how we enjoy each other without having a deep, intimate relationship. However, the conversation in a, let's say, more intimate relationship, let's say it's not just a one-off or someone you were in a relationship with for 3 months and it was great hot sex and then you're done. When you evolve to a mature conversation and you're mature and you're saying, I really want to be with this person and I care about their experience with me and I enjoy being with them. I love being with them. And what pleases them when it stops being about myself and my own, pleasure, that's what usually intimacy, it's you and me. It's not just about me getting off.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Like that.
And the masculine, well, men, the thing is, it's built into your masculine prototype. Your programming is, if I get off and if I'm confident and I go in there and I just do it, she's going to like it. It's going to be great. And that's the warrior. That's the masculine confidence that has to go in and slay the feminine dragon, her fire, she's so complicated, right? To men, it seems like it's so much to have to show up as men and prove. And that is where men, as they evolve into their own dialogue with themselves and say, you know what, I'm going to cut myself a break. I'm going to start educating myself and talking to myself about not only my pleasure, but I want to have her pleasure be important too. And that's a second stage man. That's a man that's usually more mature, who's already had female relationships, is confident with his sexuality. He doesn't have to prove anything. So that's a different conversation with you than the first one, which is I just go in and I just fuck because I'm a man. And for women too, to accept that, they also need to get out of their first stage of I'm just a body and tits and ass and fuck me and I'm gonna make the right noises like porn, because nobody's educating, nobody's having the conversation. That's a first tier. It's super hot. Don't get me wrong. It's the club.
It's very primal. It's primal. It's like what it's all about.
Yeah. And that's okay. You could do that your whole life. And there's no judgment there. It's just most men and most women, okay, they have scientific studies on this too. Most people at some point in their life evolve to a place where I really want to be with someone that I can share myself with more than we're just shallow and just doing texting, sexting. It evolves into something deeper, right? That's second, I call that second level relationship, second tier. You're more evolved. You actually care about what your partner does and says. That's when the conversation happens.
I think that then it gets better for the female or the other partner in the relationship. I mean, I guess.
And also for the masculine. As long as the masculine isn't, men need to come to a place where they say, this woman is it. Like if it's a typical heterosexual couple, and most people do at some point like monogamy, even if they're serial monogamists and they do 5 years at a time with one person, people and human beings in general want intimacy.
Well, that and security.
I want to be into you. I want to know you. I want to really know you. I want to have coffee with you and have a conversation. It's actually sexually in our brains. Our brains are the sex organs, okay? Not our genitals. And so the more I can connect with you, the more hot the sex ends up being for a very long time.
That's going to be the little quote that I stitch out right there. You're not going to hear because
intimacy.
Yeah, that's it. Because connecting with your partner on that level is what makes it that much hotter, and or can rekindle things. I mean, if you guys, listening, I think one of the a lot of the questions I got were like, how do I to ask you was essentially, I feel like my libido is waning. And it was actually more women that wrote that question in so many words. And I can give you specific examples, but essentially where I guess just being, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, women tend to get bored sooner. And because we tend to be more bisexual. And this is coming from studies again. I should probably just send you a list of all the books I've read with all the quotes and we tend to be more bisexual. This is a known fact. It's just not in the common knowledge yet. It will be eventually. But we're able to transition between sexes a little more, even if we're dominant heterosexual. So we tend to get bored sooner. And even if we've got great lovers and so on, there's something called the Coolidge effect. And it happens to men and women. It just happens to women sooner, which is that setting of that comfort level where the brain chemistry is no longer dopamine, serotonin. It's starting to get into like feel good, mommy type children bonding when you're bonding with a partner. And so it's a feel good chemistry. This is all brain chemistry, okay, and biology. So there's a whole science to intimacy. And we get to the Coolidge effect, and that's when you're like, ugh, okay, it's another Saturday night. I'm really like I really don't know if that blowjob's going to do it for me this time. I'm not getting excited because I'm kind of, I mean, I love my partner and she's amazing and her body's perfect, but I've known her for 5, 10, 15 years. Been there, done that. So to counteract that, this is what monogamous partners, people that want really long-term relationships beyond the chemistry wears off, the dopamine, the high hit serotonins and dopamine effect. Most couples within 6 months, okay, science again, to a year and a half to 2 years. You're lucky if you can squeak out a year and a half with the same partner over and over and over again and still feel like really high and doped up. Because then we want men and women. Women are better cheaters. We don't say, I need someone else, babe. We just quietly go on AM and find another lover while you're getting busted, cheating on us. We want sex with new partners just as much as you guys do, and as much. We love sex. And so when we get to that place where we're owning it and not sneaking off and not getting busted, and when men realize women get bored sooner, we start talking about the Coolidge effect, and that's when long-term monogamy becomes the fire you keep burning, and you do it with a conversation, and you do it with bondage, and you do it with exploring, you do it with creativity, you do it with, okay, life is tough, right? Survival, just paying the bills. Sex is tough to keep it ignited like a fire. So with your love partner and the women that are asking the question and the men that are asking the same question, like, hey, babe, I just want you to know I need a lot of women. It's okay for them, but women are doing it anyways, a lot of men. Why don't we have the conversation and say, look, we hit the Coolidge effect. And if you don't even know what it is, you can open up anything. How do I keep my love alive? There's articles everywhere about how do I keep the fire with my partner, my monogamous partner, because I love them and I want to create a life with them. I have children. I want to build an empire. And there's so much out there now. The literature has been going on for 20 years about how to keep the fire going, but people are stuck in vanilla. And if you stay in vanilla land and missionary position and what your tribe says and believes, what do you have to grow into?
Well,
because a relationship is so
I think
gross.
Maybe, and just forgive me for maybe having a parallel that I'm not sure if this completely jives, but I get the concept. I read a lot of studies. I'm big in music, like listening to music, always have been, just lots of different stuff, had musicians and bands on the podcast. But I read about essentially that same effect happening with people listening to music. And that's why they say that sometimes when people get older, it can be genetic, but a lot of times it has to do with just culturally how you were raised with music. But it becomes less and less of an endorphin and dopamine effect when you hear these songs. You might, and this is why, and this is a theory I have on that. This is why I think like I have friends that are old heads, like they're only like 10 years older than me, but they swear the music I listen to now is shit compared to stuff they used to listen to. And my opinion on that is that those things still bring up that endorphin hit. That's that first time you had sex in high school and it was hot and raunchy in the backseat of the car. It was whatever the thing was because it takes you back to that place. You know what I mean? Where, oh man, that song gets me going because that was, I don't know, whatever song, Eye of the Tiger. I don't know if you're having sex to Eye of the Tiger, but that song might bring it back for you where you listen to newer stuff and it's like, well, that dopamine hit's not there anymore because this isn't real music to me. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I'm saying the same thing, but essentially I feel like that can happen with a monogamous relationship or let's just say a relationship that's been there for a long time to where things can pooter out because
it happens to everybody. It happens. I don't care the gender. Right? It happens to everybody. We're human beings. We have very busy minds. We're very creative. We need novelty. We need new things. And so as a collective culture, when we start to realize, our partners are our creative pushback on self and growth. That's third stage. Because if you're as a partnership, when you partner with your mate, or someone you're monogamous with over a long period of time, it's super, super boring if that person isn't challenging you to
I agree
grow.
wholeheartedly.
Isn't saying, I'm not in that pushback, that wrestling match, that inspires traveling to a new country, doing something new in the bedroom together. I mean, it's a lifetime journey together. It should be an adventure. Otherwise, if you get bored and settled, now there's people that are contracted for safety more than they are for adventure. And so that's an interesting dynamic. If you're the adventuresome one and your person that you're with is a safety person, then there are real tough conversations. But you have two adventuresome people. Most of the time, the fire is pretty strong, even if life gets heavy and hard and it's overwhelming. You're tired at night and all of that. But if you have two people that are into safety that are together, then maybe football games and retiring and, doing the things that are pretty standard tribal. It's a comfort zone and we're all so different. But the people on your podcast, I swear to God, that you and your lady and the people that are here on the podcast, we're adventuresome people, most likely. We want to keep the fire burning. We're like, what do we do? How do we make it work? So that wrestling match is super important to have with your woman, your man, and to keep each other on each other's toes.
I love that. I really
And
do.
if like my husband and I, so going back to my husband and I, 30 plus years, I knew him since I was 16. And we grew and burned and did everything and had this incredible life. And then it became such a glue, a friendship. And I'm an adventurous person and he's a safety person. And I call it that groundedness, right? Anchor. But it's knowing each other and knowing I love you and I want you to grow into the best person you can be. And mine happens to be into diving into provoking people and adventure and vision. And so, and his is not that. And so the partner I have now is, provocative and visionary and it's a fire. It's an absolute
And I like how
fire.
you talk about provoking somebody, because your version of provoking somebody is like having them expand their mind. And it's such a positive thing. That's one of the reasons why I brought you on the podcast. Because I, from what I gathered, you were like this, but you are so much more than what I had thought. And I greatly appreciate your words on that, because it's inspiring to hear somebody that talks about sexual, growth, and not only sexual growth, but like how that's intrinsically tied to like relationships, because I learn all the time from guests on the podcast, but also from life. And I don't know how many times my wife and I have almost had to reinvent ourselves, not from a place of like, oh, we're almost going to break up, but there's just been different iterations. Me doing this podcast is very time consuming to do it the way that I do it. And I do it all myself. And it took a strain on us when I first wanted to do it, but it was room and time that we had to make in our relationship for me to kind of like, release that pressure to get off, if you will, over here. And then I got into running, and the same thing. I got off on running so much that now I have to run, 30 to 50 miles a week, depending on if I'm training for a race or something. And I'm addicted to the endorphins, the dopamine. Like I get where I'm getting off on those worlds, but in the same breath, we also need to come together in the bedroom. And I know that I'm lucky in the fact that I have that, because there's not every couple can do that. You sometimes have this masculine and this feminine, and the feminine sometimes is just plays that support role so hard that the masculine may not even know that they have this want to maybe go to nursing school or to go to put on some lingerie and make an Instagram profile under some avatar name. I'm just saying, like, there's all these different ways to like do these different ways to blow it off. And I think the bedroom is a great place because it's just the ultimate trust. Like you said so many times, like it's really this intimate conversation alongside this intimate sensation that is almost primitive. It's primeval because you know what you like, but then there's also things that you're trying to get through in the human condition of like, maybe I want to try some butt stuff and I just need to work up the courage to maybe tell my partner that I want to do that, and I'm circling the drain when it comes to like stupid things. I keep saying butt stuff. I don't know. I'm not into butt stuff. So maybe to me it's taboo, on me, right? I don't mind butt stuff.
It's actually great. It's actually a great way to, intro, because a lot of people do want to do that a lot. And it's just, maybe tiptoe into it right away and go that route. Cause there's so much intro stuff. Just to use that as an example, there's so many ways to research and look into it and have the conversation with yourself first and maybe your closest friends that are doing it. But then to go, I mean, we all have access to the internet pretty much. And even if you have to go to the library, it's
Yeah.
like, it's there. It's all there about how to have the conversation with your partner, what to say. And maybe they're
Right.
not into it. And so they say no. But there's so much, the human body and our sensual trigger points, the ears, the eyes, the nose. I mean, sensuality, even if your partner is like, they might come
Right.
around eventually too. And it's that trust. And because we are so vulnerable in the bedroom, and that's the most intimate we can be. And that's why it's so important to be talking
Right.
about sex and sexuality, because it's our liberation is in that bedroom. Because if we can be safe with that one person and be ourselves, then we can
Right.
grow our
Or
authentic
unlock the rest of the
selves
relationship
out.
as much as like this.
Unlock the
Right.
beast. We can unlock the beast. Or the goddess, or the dancing goddess that just has this beautiful body that just wants to play and explore and climb a pole and do all this stuff. I mean, she wants to come out and play, and she needs to feel safe and
Right.
okay to do it. And that's why women in victim mode, we are moving out of it. And there's a feminist movement that's still pretty hard blame men, and yet there's outbreaks everywhere of a fourth wave that is saying, that is also for Black people. They've got their own movement, because it's been very difficult in the feminist movement for Blacks to have their
Right.
voices heard. It's white
Right.
women having the
That's huge.
conversation, and now it's becoming trans women, it's becoming lesbians. It's like the conversation in the fourth wave is a much more inclusive,
Uh-oh.
bigger group of women that
It's getting
it's not even women, it could be men that define themselves, with regardless of gender, as feminine.
right.
They feel like they are
Skye, I
female,
lost.
and they're having the conversation with the feminists and saying, I'm a female, yeah, I have a penis, but I feel like a woman. I want to be a woman in my life. I don't want to relate to the feminist movement as a
Right.
woman. And that's what the fourth wave is. And people don't even talk about it. They don't even know there's a fourth wave happening
I wouldn't
right
have known
under our
that, and I like
noses
that
right
you brought
now.
that up, because that is that where you feel we are now?
I wish. We're still have the remnants of the third wave, and the Me Too is very angry, and it's a lot of victim. And it's extremely loud right now because they're finally talking. Women 20 years ago weren't talking. It was a very safe conversation they were pushing against in the workforce. Now women are bringing it into the bedroom, and they're just dragging the masculine in every way they can, and
Right.
just beating it up. And it's like revolutions. It's the same thing. It's that there's always a backlash to a movement that comes in on top of it that says, and so other women like me are saying, I don't agree with beating up men and victimizing men any more than
That's
victimizing
huge.
ourselves. And I'm all about empowering men and women. And so there's more and more women that are realizing that I can no longer play victim. It doesn't serve me or humanity or men to be in a victim place, because women can define their careers, and we do decide to have babies, and that stops a lot of women's careers. It's not necessarily
Right.
a glass ceiling. It's simply biology. It happens, and we can make a choice. I have a sister-in-law, and she was more on top of being on track than her husband at the time as a lawyer, and she had a baby, and she said, I'm going to work. There's going to be childcare. She gave up her career after she had a baby, and she did it because she chose, after she had that baby, she realized it's more important than a brilliant law career. She was married to someone who could also be working, so she had the safety and support to raise the child. But women are choosing, even in countries like Sweden and Switzerland, women are so empowered there, and they're so supported. There's childcare, there's all kinds of services that support children. And men, there's no bias in men staying home and taking care of the children. And you know what? They're
That's
choosing to
huge.
stay home. They've got all the freedom in the world, and they're not going into high power executive roles. It's
Right.
their
And that almost
choice.
flies in the face of the Me Too movement, in terms of like what you would see at the
Yep.
outset of, like, when you see Me Too, you can just make generalizations about that. And I think to actually have like an intelligent conversation about it is huge, because you don't have this poor me, pity me. If you really take advantage of the fact that, like you said, women really do they control the vagina in the world. And that is really, it's a big thing because I mean, and it is the driving force behind a lot of, as you were in marketing before, I'm sure, sex sells, you know what I mean? And now women are able to take control of that. And I think that, you know, I think that
So
previous
Yep.
predators need to be called out. I appreciate the Me Too movement for that. I think that's amazing. I think it's good that they're outing big people like the Weinstein guy, the Epstein guy. I don't know about all these Steens. You know, all these guys that were just, and I'm talking super high level here, but it has had gigantic implications in the biggest place where people are in the U.S. Like, oh, we lost video. Do I still have you on audio, Skye?
I see you
Okay.
on video.
Yeah, I lost your video. That's
Yeah,
okay. All right, cool.
hear
No, I
you.
just want to make sure you're still with me. But no, I think it's great because like
Yeah,
humans are built off,
absolutely.
like humans. Americans are built off of media a lot. Like we all grew up watching movies, music, MTV, the whole bit. And it's a very specific way that it was being done. And now it's changing. And then to allow, like you said, women to have the ability to choose between either being an executive or a stay-at-home mom is huge. You have a choice.
Yeah, we
right?
have a
Which
choice.
wasn't the case before.
We always have a choice. And that's the part
Right.
that they're not talking about, is that we do have a choice. It's more that the story gets reframed as, because there was truth to it in the 60s, 50s, and previous, since the Industrial Revolution. I'm not going to talk about earlier times because then we get into a whole historical thing about women's roles and men's roles. But I mean, to keep bashing and harping on the patriarchy and that we're victims doesn't serve us. It's like we do have a lot of choice, and we can be those executive women. We can do anything we want or choose to do. Nothing's holding us back. And sure, maybe it's a little harder to overcome for me to be a woman on my bondage side, to show myself wrapped up with my body. I'm dealing with a lot of, well, she must be a hooker, or she must be this, or she must be that. And that's okay. I'm not a victim to the name calling. I am choosing this, and this is what my voice is my vision. And all women in a third world country have the opportunity to speak up and say, this is my choice to stay home. This is my choice to not stay home.
I want to drive
Whatever
a car.
it is,
Iran.
it doesn't have to be
car. Let those women drive cars, you sons of bitches. I don't understand that one. That's a weird one. I don't get it.
They are in Saudi Arabia now.
Saudi
They just
Arabia,
started, and it's like they're baby steps, you know. But third world women, you know, we've got the world is our oyster. I swear to God, like you said, the vagina. We have so much power in our beautiful bodies with our beautiful minds, and men want it's like they have a beautiful, powerful, smart woman who knows she chooses, isn't a victim to her own sexuality, is confident in the bedroom, is confident in her man, loves men, because that's where we have to start. We have to say we are not victims to men. You know, and that's hard to get over if you've been programmed feminism. I've been discriminated against, or if you're a Black person, yeah, it is harder. There's truth to that. And also, that's not how I would define myself with the limitation. I would say I'm going to go beyond it, but I'm not going to keep blaming another human being or another culture or society, because there's too many choices here for me to pick from the menu. That I actually can be that.
Feminism, in my opinion, you're completely taking advantage of what life has given you, the opportunities that you have, and you're not allowing any sort of cultural template to kind of shoo you into one thing or another. And just to make that decision, I think is incredibly huge, because you're not. You are a very out of the box kind of person. I don't know how else to say it, but like in terms again of like traditionalness, it's very hard for an artist to make it. It's very hard for a female artist to make it. And then the fact that you're talking about something that is the ultimate vulnerability, you know what I mean? And especially when it comes to this touchy time, Me Too, BLM, these different things that are, they've just always been there, but now there's a voice behind them. Even the politics has been divisive enough to where you can have people throwing all the way in just because of the gender of somebody trying to become president. You know what I mean? Like that is coming from a generation after generation of just being stuck in this traditional thought process that not everybody really actually thought. It was just, you didn't talk about it. You know what I mean? I think we could probably end up doing this for hours, Skye. You're an amazing guest to have on, but we're hitting 2 hours, and I'm thinking that if we wanted to do this another one in the future, it did, right? I think we've covered a lot of bases, but I feel like I would love to have you on again in the future to talk more about some other things that we didn't get to, and I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. We did talk about skyeavalon.com, which is SKYE Avalon.com. Skye is an artist, so I'm guessing you have some of this artwork for sale, right? People could actually take a look at it. And okay,
I do.
and then,
Yep. I have original paintings, very large.
And a lot of them are of her, but there's also some other ones that you've done, and they're amazing. And I think you guys should check out also her certified sacred contract consultant and coach site, which is sacredcontractreading.com.
Yeah.
And then she's also a published author. She has written affirmations for the Everyday Goddess deck, right? Do I have that right? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's available retail stores, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's been out for over a decade. And it's for mostly women, but men can use it too.
I want to get one. Me and my wife will mess with it for sure. Yeah.
I'm going to send you one. Okay. I will send you a bunch. Please. I'll send you a lot.
I have many people I would love to share some of this knowledge bomb with. I'm going to, of course, share this podcast on YouTube. If you guys are listening, you guys can also, see this amazing interview with Skye on YouTube. And then she'll probably reshare it on her pages as well. But I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you wanted to tell our guests before we go that we may have missed? I know there's a lot, honestly. Like, I think we could have gone on some tangents, but...
I know. It's just so great to be here. And thank you so much and for giving me the opportunity to speak. And it's really exciting. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
You've taught me a lot. I feel like I'm less of a stereotypical white guy now, and I feel like I'm actually...
This is great. I mean, I could go, especially the sex stuff. I mean, get your wife on next time. It's like, we can have this girl to girl for everybody, Oh, there's your little fun.
I'm almost done with this thing. It's not helpful to have you in the camera.
Maybe not him. Maybe not him. Maybe another decade for him.
I'll make sure he's raised in the proper ways, Like I'm going to teach him those newfangled thoughts we've been talking about. All right, Skye, Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.